How can we as a society minimize racism and move into anti-racism society? This path is starting to be processed by the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion. This stakeholder essentially helps minimize racism by addressing how racism affects health and well-being, education, employment, economic development, and public safety that's being placed upon communities. They essentially help by highlighting strategies to minimize these issues. My thesis statement for the final project would be County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion addresses the issues of colorism, anti-racism, mental health, and racist immigration enforcement to racism, anti-racism in Los Angeles. Merrill explains in Skin Tone Mexicans' perceptions of discrimination in new immigrant destinations, how Latino and Black community face discrimination based on their skin color. This will explain colorism in County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion, anti-racism agenda within Los Angeles. County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion connects to colorism because they have an equity initiative called Combating Identity-Based Hate. Colorism applies to my following because the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion addresses how their equity initiative applies throughout Los Angeles. According to County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion, colorism connects to them because they take an action in addressing discrimination and violence has been happening in recent cases. Colorism supports my thesis because in one of the equity initiatives that's County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion addresses and has a solution to the issue. Ibram X. Kendi explains in How to Be an Anti-Racist how everyone as an individual faces discrimination and that it's stopping us from seeing each other as human. As if we start seeing each other as normal human beings, it will essentially help us lead into an anti-racism society. This will help explain anti-racism and the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion goals of combating racism within Los Angeles. RD connects to anti-racism because they address not racism as an equity initiative, which is equity and diversity funds. This also explains to my following Los Angeles because my stakeholder RD exists within Los Angeles. According to RD, they explain how their goal is to minimize racism and to create a society where racism doesn't exist. Their goal is to also call out acts that support racism. Racism currently disrupts many communities from seeing each other as human. My primary stakeholder connects to my main idea, anti-racism, because they take an action about creating a community where racism is not normalized. The path to non-racism leads to a society where we can dismantle issues like education, employment, economic development, and public safety that's being caused by racism. Not-racism supports my thesis because the primary stakeholder addresses the issues of not-racism. Their agenda is to help address the issue and help increase the commitment to fight against racism. Maria Elena explains in Legal Status, Time in the USA, and the Well-Being of Latinos in Los Angeles how the root to mental racism is racism. This will help explain how racism affects everyone and how RD anti-racism agenda within Los Angeles. According to Legal Status, Time in the USA, and the Well-Being of Latinos in Los Angeles, Maria Elena states how being discriminated against can take a toll upon our mental health and affect us internally and mentally. Mental health essentially relates to Los Angeles because in Legal Status, Time in USA, and the Well-Being of Latinos in Los Angeles, the research is being conducted within Los Angeles, but also because my stakeholder RD exists within Los Angeles. Mental health relates to the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion because they have resources that are meant to address mental health. A specific resources that is being listed is The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Could Prosper Together by Heather McGee. My primary stakeholder addresses mental health because they provide support and resources that help educate others about mental health. Mental health supports my introduction because once we create a space where racism is minimized or doesn't exist, it can help improve the people who have suffered from discrimination. Since discrimination leads to a toll upon an individual's mental health, but seeing racial acts can also lead to a toll upon mental health because individuals would be living in fear. This will also cause depression, isolation, and paranoia. Mental health supports my thesis because the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion in resources that acknowledge mental health. Cecilia Menjivar talks about how constant racial profiling within the police causes an interested relationship between the public and the police. This causes racism within immigration enforcement. It will also explain RD anti-racism goals within Los Angeles. According to immigration enforcement, the racialization of legal status and perceptions of police, Cecilia Menjivar explains how ICE has been racial profiling innocent civilians that seem to be a close description of a typical criminal. That stereotype leads to constant acts of racism that they end up getting away with. RD connects to racism in immigration enforcement because there's a strategy dedicated to helping these causes. This strategy is called Strategic Goal Number 2. My primary stakeholder connects to racism within immigration enforcement because they address how it can affect public safety. This also applies to my following Los Angeles because my stakeholder RD exists within Los Angeles. Racist immigration enforcement supports my introduction because racial profiling fundamentally acts as a key to get innocent victims into jail. While racial profiling exists within the immigration enforcement, it allows the public to not be safe. It also leads to mistrust within the system because these racial profiling acts violate many constitutional laws. Examples of these would be the 4th and 5th Amendment. Racist immigration enforcement supports my thesis of County Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion addresses and has a solution to the issue. The County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion talks about how combating identity-based hate motion is dedicated to solving racism, anti-racism within Los Angeles. According to the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion, they state how this motion's goal is to address hate crimes that are happening within diverse communities. Having this motion allows these diverse communities to become safer. They do this by providing recommendations that can help prevent these racist crimes and how to act upon these issues. They provide these recommendations of support towards Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, anti-LGBTQ, Jewish communities, and anti-Black hate. They also reach out to other stakeholders that can help achieve these goals. Examples of these stakeholders include County Human Relations Commission, Department of Public Health and Violence Prevention, CEO Office of Emergency Management, Department of Mental Health, Sheriff's Department, District Attorney Office, County Council, and other relevant county entities. Having these stakeholders acknowledge the issue of hate crimes happening around the communities will help reduce the issue. This supports my introduction because this act of help minimizes the racist society we live in. This is the start of our society to change into an anti-racist community. My primary stakeholder lists proofs of how they can help minimize and address racism within Los Angeles. This also supports my thesis statement because colorism is one of the issues that are being listed. The County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion talks about equity and diversity funds. This explains how this motion is dedicated to making an anti-racism community within Los Angeles. According to RD, they say how that the motion essentially shows how they donate to organizations that help prevent identity-based hate, bias, discrimination, and xenophobia. This will help make an anti-racism community. The specific resources they address are community safety and violence prevention, healing center practices, intergroup relations, and art-based cultural performance and community events. Specific organizations that help address these issues are community-based organizations and county departments. This section once again supports my introduction because they have resources that prevent identity-based hate, bias, discrimination, and xenophobia that leads to a society where racism can no longer exist. Having these useful resources help victims feel safe. This section once again supports my thesis because the motion supports anti-racism. This also applies to my fault line, which is Los Angeles, because my stakeholder RD exists within Los Angeles. The County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion explains how the sum of us, what racism costs everyone, and how we can prosper together by Heather McGee is dedicated to mental health. This will explain how they show interest in mental health within Los Angeles. According to RD, they say in the book how racism can ruin someone's mental health badly. It could affect someone's mental health because they're being told racist things towards them, which could lower your self-esteem. Having these thoughts put into your mouth can lead into believing these words. This supports my introduction because racism can influence someone's mental health, which essentially stops us from becoming an anti-racist society. This supports my thesis because my primary stakeholder addresses how mental health is an issue and how they're trying to address it. This applies to my fault line, which is Los Angeles, because my stakeholder already exists within Los Angeles. Already explains strategic goals number 2, addresses racism within immigration enforcement. This would explain how they show interest in anti-racism within Los Angeles. According to RD, they say how this motion is essentially to help convicted felonies to reduce their time. They do this by having strategies that can help young adults prevent going to jail. It also addresses how some arrests are systematically racist that happens within the justice system. This relates to my introduction because racism within immigration enforcement continues for racism to escalate and become normalized. Racial profiling individuals is an act of racism where it can escalate and become violent. It also blocks us from moving forward to an anti-racism society. This relates to my thesis because the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion addresses racism, immigration enforcement. This also applies to my fall line, which is Los Angeles, because my stakeholder already exists within Los Angeles. Having resources to help victims who face racism reduces racism and leads to a society of anti-racism. Having a support system helps victims feel safe and not alone. Having these resources also raise awareness to the issue that some people might not know. Acknowledging racism can reduce it too. The County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion is an example of how they'll help reduce racism and raise awareness to the issue. This stakeholder is important for me to address because they'll explain how Black Americans have faced racial hostility historically and how it also continues to affect Black individuals the most because racism is a large disparity in family stability, health, mental wellness, education, employment, economic development, public safety, criminal justice, and housing. Once our society starts educating ourselves upon the topic of racism, this can help us recognize our own biases and help create a society where racism isn't normalized or doesn't exist within Los Angeles and all around. This essentially supports my introduction because acknowledging and understanding the issue can lead to an anti-racism society because we're not denying that racism doesn't exist. This supports my introduction because the County of Los Angeles Office of Diversity and Inclusion addresses the issue of colorism, anti-racism, mental health, and racist immigration enforcement in Los Angeles.